So I'm going to talk to you today about something you've all known of since you've entered into this world. You see it every day. Your parents and their parents and their parents for thousands of generations have known of it too. And your future generations for thousands of years to come will also relate to it. And yet, you likely know or care very little about it. And I'm going to change that. It is, of course, the moon that I'm talking about. So before I get started, I'll share some context with you about where humanity is at with our relationship with the moon, because we're at an inflection point here. It's not even a once-in-a-lifetime moment. It is the only time we've ever been in the situation we're in today. And so the decisions we make in this inflection point represent all of humanity since our ancestors began to stare up at the moon. Right now, there is global momentum for heading back to the moon, both from space agencies like NASA, but also the commercial sector. I'm sure many of you were alive, or if not alive, then you're aware of the Apollo era. In the 60s and 70s, when humans first landed on the moon. We're in a different headspace now. The idea isn't to go there, visit, plant a flag, and move on to the next sexy thing after making our political point. The idea is to go there and stay. For the first time ever, becoming an interplanetary species. That's the stuff of sci-fi. And what's changed is that now we're driven out of the will to explore scientifically. And given this injection of commercial interest, there is now an emerging business case to go back to the moon. Now, I appreciate this all sounds very futuristic, or so my mum tells me. But it's happening now. As I speak, there are spacecrafts orbiting the moon. There are spacecrafts aiming to land on the moon. And before the end of this decade, which is the next few years, astronauts are planning to be on the moon again. So, I'm a lunar strategist. I'm a strategy advisor for a lunar exploration company that was the first commercial company to ever launch to the moon back in 2022. I advise the industry on how to navigate sustaining human presence on the moon. I've crafted lunar governance perspectives that have been presented at the UN and put together those business cases leading teams of industry experts. Now, I want you to care about the moon as much as I care about the moon. And I know in today's world, it's so hard to keep up with lunar industry trends, or maybe even care with everything that's going on in the world today. But the moon is one of the few constants we have in our world. So in a few short years, when you look up at the moon, and you might see lights blinking back down at you from the surface, I want you to know that you did care. Now, when I go on about the moon, the most common question I get asked is, why are we even going back? So putting on my lunar strategist hat, I can share with you a few of industry's tactical reasons. The first is that the moon can be a stepping stone to deeper space exploration. There are quantities and resources of oxygen and water which allows humans to not only stay in space, using it for human life support, but also we can use it for propellant to go further into space. The second tactical reason is that if we connected the moon and the Earth into one single ecosystem, kind of like how our continents are very well connected today, some people think that we could move heavy polluting critical industry to the moon and clean up our planet. The third example is that actually the moon has no atmosphere. So to date, it's remained relatively untouched, which means that we can understand things about our universe that we can't do from Earth. Now, taking off my lunar strategist hat and putting on my Earthling hat, I just want us to explore, kind of like how humans have actually always wanted to explore, whether that is diving the deepest oceans or climbing the tallest mountains. I'm so curious what's beyond Earth, and I don't wish for us to go forth and conquer. What means the most to me is answering some of our biggest unanswered questions, and to be brave to go beyond our little cozy bubble of Earth. So you can see that there's a few good reasons, but there's no real consensus. Maybe you resonate with something I just said. Maybe you disagree with it. And actually, if you do disagree with it, it's all the more reason for you to have an input, because maybe we're missing something. As I mentioned, going back to the moon is happening. The amount of countries and investors and companies that have poured resources into figuring this out means that it's not an if, it's a when, and how fast that activity scales. But we, not just as a space industry, but as humanity, really need to think about what going back looks like. So imagine we go back, and we keep going back, and the time between our missions condenses down from years to months to days. And let's jump to 2050, when we have frequent, reliable access to the moon, kind of like catching a flight. Humans are permanently based there. What does that even look like? Is it science-led, where, a bit like the film The Martian, there are research bases over the interesting parts of the moon, generating huge amounts of scientific data, helping us understand that as a celestial body? Is it tourism-led, where the moon is the next cool destination to go to? There are lunar hotels and lunar experiences. Is it industry-led, where we've mined the moon for its resources that are sometimes scarce on Earth, elements, metals, materials, and we've brought them back to make profit? Is it exploration-led, where the moon is like a services on the way for rockets to something more interesting? Is it military-led, where space forces have set up bases to gather intelligence and monitor other countries' activities? We don't know what the future will look like, but whether it's one or a combination of any of these, there are really critical aspects that span any one of them. And for these aspects, to have an opinion on them, you don't need to be the head of a space force. You don't need to be the head of the UN. You don't need a Nobel Prize in science. Your human experience, your thoughts, your ethics, your morals are enough of a qualification. We have the most blank canvas we will ever have to design an ideal society. And we should think about what that means to us. So I mentioned some of these aspects that you don't need to be crazy qualified to think about. Let's talk through some of them. First one is time. One of the biggest conversations happening in the industry right now is, how do you define a lunar time zone? And it's a really valid conversation to have. I mean, God, imagine going somewhere with a very little concept of time, and yet everything you do is life-threatening and time-critical. So let's think back to the only proxy we have, which is Earth, on how to define a time zone. Back in 1884, at the International Meridian Conference, where Greenwich was chosen as the prime meridian. And that's because in 1884, in the age of the British Empire, 2/3 of the world's ships were already using GMT. So naturally, it was the least disruptive choice to just adopt this and roll it out globally. Do we really want the same thing to happen on the moon? The most dominating, incumbent powers have set our norm for our baseline of time. It means the time zones we will forevermore have would have been dictated by those with the most power, the most money, whoever was there first. The next aspect to think about is territories. Now, thankfully, we do have some guidance from the Outer Space Treaty from the UN here that most countries have signed, that basically declares that no state can appropriate another celestial body, which means a country can't go to the moon and say it's their own. Fantastic. But in all the futures that I outlined, realistically, if you're having a permanent base there and operating on it, it's unlikely other players, other countries are going to be able to operate there too. So again, let's go back to the proxy that we have for Earth. In the 1880s, where 13 European colonial powers and the US were convened to decide how to divide up Africa. Now, first you'll notice this highly exclusive guest list to this conversation in the first place. And the second thing you'll notice is the inorganic nature of making these decisions. There was no luxury of considering culture or tribes or linguistic similarities. It was a very resource-driven conversation. Now, I've been talking about the moon's resources. So what if the same thing happens? What if the most advanced spacefaring nations decide amongst themselves where to operate in these resource-rich areas of the moon, whether that is the lunar ice deposits or the peaks of eternal sunshine that you have on the moon's surface for power? And more importantly, what happens to the countries that aren't yet part of this exclusive conversation? This is where we need to be really purposeful and really proactive in shaping this discussion. Other aspects we need to think through include things like language spoken, currency used, religions recognized. And this is where all of your experiences, as diverse and beautiful as they are, matter. Because very soon, our definition of home is going to extend beyond Earth, and we need whatever home means to us to extend there too. Now, the first step is just simply having a view. Have a view, so if your children or your grandchildren were going to go to the moon one day, which is a very real possibility, what would you want that to look like for them? What values would you want to have been upheld for them? The second step is to socialize this view. Talk to family about it, talk to friends about it, talk to work colleagues about it. Persuade and be persuaded. Because you never know, you might find yourself in a forum where you are shaping this discussion. To figure out these aspects, we need everyone. We need artists, we need doctors, we need historians, we need politicians, we need everyone. So I promise you, no matter what your background is, your view is important. So just as I'm a lunar strategist, I would love for you all to become lunar strategists too. Harnessing your personal views, because once this window of opportunity, this inflection point has gone, it will be too late to shape. And we owe it to ourselves, our future generations, and our trusty little moon that keeps us company every night to care. Thank you.